So, I want to share with you a pretty scary experience I had last week on a dive in Cozumel and the follow up dive that maybe restored my confidence in my gear and my training. I'm a pretty new diver. I've been diving for about 7 months. Before this trip that I just took down to Cozumel, I had about 15 dives over that 7 months. I'm open water certified and nitrox certified. Most of the diving I do, though, is in cold California waters, shore entry stuff. This was my first trip to warm water with boat entry and drift diving, and so lots to learn here, but so many pretty things. For example, this shark that swims almost right up to me was an amazing experience. So I'm really loving the trip, right? So we're in this warm water, drift diving, so nice and easy. I'm so nice and warm. On this particular dive, though, let me go ahead and pause this and give a little bit of context. This is dive number 6 for me on the trip. So the second dive on my third day. Before we go jump in the water, I recognize that my Mark 3i Garmin dive computer, the Garmin Descent Mark 3i, is not reading the cylinder pressure on my 15-liter cylinder. And at first, I didn't know what it was. I thought maybe he was having a communication issue with the T2 transmitter, the Garmin T2 transmitter. So I did the find my device functionality on the dive computer. The transmitter pinged, so it made an audible sound, which let me know that it at least could find it, but it still wasn't picking up the pressure on the cylinder. So I thought that maybe there was something wrong with the communication between the dive computer and the transmitter. And this is, we're talking about electronics here, right? So this is the risk you take when you're dealing with electronics in a safety sensitive scenario. I thought maybe it could have been the battery, but we couldn't confirm it. We tried a whole bunch of things, removing it from my dive computer, re-adding it to my dive computer, reconnecting it, air pressure on and off, reattaching the DIN stage 1 to the cylinder, and detaching it and reattaching it. None of that worked. And so, but we wanted to continue with the dive. So some folks made the recommendation that maybe I could just use a loaner set of regulators. So that's where we're at right now. We took my regulators off of my cylinder, and these regulators are next dive regulators, the ones that I own. Beautiful regulators. I got the balanced adjustable 2.5 regulators. They breathe so well for me. And I'm a big guy, so I suck down air. Part of the reason I'm driving with 15 liters. But we took them off and we put the boat's loaner regulators on. And the regulators are a little bit smaller. They're unbalanced and they're not adjustable. But it had an SPG on it, an analog SPG, so the submersible pressure gauge. So I could actually see my cylinder pressure, which was the more important safety feature of this. And so we went ahead and put the loaner regulators on. We jumped into the water. I'm testing my primary and my backup regulator, second stage regulators, just to make sure that they're working. And they seem to be okay. As we start to descend, I notice I'm breathing a little bit harder on them than normal, but nothing to really worry me about. I'm breathing heavy on them, but they're handling it okay. I'm thinking I'm just going to control my breathing. Everything's fine. And at this point, we had this great experience with the shark, but now my dive master is turning into the swim through and the drift is kind of pulling me past it. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I start kicking right here to try to get into this swim through. I'm trying to catch up with the group. So you can see the dive master's up front. Then we've got somebody between me and the dive master. And at this point, I'm kind of fighting the current a little bit to get into the swim through. I should have stuck close to the coral, so I could have avoided some of that drift. I also could really work on my trim so that I'm more streamlined as I'm going through this drift. I work on my weights and all kinds of stuff. But you can hear on my breathing, there's a little bit of a wetness to the breathing. Sounds a little gurgly, right? So we're going through this dive. And what happens here is about halfway through this dive through, getting through this coral, and I can't remember exactly where. I think it's here in just a few seconds here. I take a really deep breath, and I end up There it is. I think that's where it was. I end up with a mouth full of water, and I start coughing here, right? So I don't know if it came through the mouthpiece or if it came through the diaphragm itself in the regulator, but I'm starting to panic now, right? I've got water in my lungs. I'm trying to cough it up. I'm not getting enough air to cough it up. And so there's that period under the arch where I'm questioning whether I'm going to continue through the next arch in the dive through, or I'm going to abort through this space that's right above us. So I'm going to back up a little bit here because it is right about here, I think, where I get a mouthful of water. Yep, there it is. Oh, that's it right there. That's it right there. So you kind of heard that pop sound and I start coughing. And so I kind of dropped the GoPro at this point. It's still floating, right? But I'm not holding on the GoPro at this point. And I'm panicking a little bit. So I pull the primary out. I pull up the octo, shove it in my mouth, turn around and look at the person behind me who is still just around the coral, just around the turn. So she's not seeing me because I want to give her the out of air sign. But I'm really struggling to breathe. And I'm coughing at the same time. You can't really hear the coughs here, but I'm breathing in as hard as I can. And then I'm coughing on the way out. And you can't really tell from the audio here, but that's what's happening. And I'm panicking now, right? So I had the primary in, I ended up with water in my mouth. I drop it out, put the octo in. It's breathing a little bit better. So I can at least take an in breath, but I'm still coughing really strong. And I still feel like I'm not getting enough air in. And I look up and I see the sky and I'm thinking, that's a lot of space between these two arches. I'm just going to book it up to the surface, right? And at this point, I'm in full panic mode, right? Because I just switched to my octo. I just turned to the person behind me, tried to get their attention. They were just barely out of sight. But they were so close. Like, had I waited a second more, she would have seen me. But at this point, I just made a decision. I'm in panic mode, so I just book it. I book it straight up. I'm going to go ahead and make it up through this little opening. And I'm coughing on the way up, right? Now, there's a few things going on here, right? I'm first of all panicking to try to get up through this coral, and I'm kicking hard. The air is starting to expand in my VC. I'm not holding my breath at all, right? I'm trying to breathe in on this regulator, and I'm coughing on the way out, breathing in and coughing out. So I'm not too worried about my lungs, but I am starting at this point to worry a little bit about the air in my BC. As you can see, I'm passing my bubbles. You can see those bubbles passing my camera as I'm ascending, which means I'm ascending way too fast. And I realize this right as I'm clearing that coral, right as my feet clear that coral. And if you remember, I was at about 65 feet. So I got a little ways to go here, but it doesn't take very long as that air is expanding. So I start burping my deflator as quickly as I can. And I'm burping, but I realize that it's not slowing me down enough. So at this point, I'm reaching over to my right shoulder and grabbing my dump valve, and I just yank on my dump valve and dump all the air out. And by that point, I'm dumping all the air, and I stop, and I realize I'm about 2 feet from the surface. And you can kind of hear me coughing in the background. And I'm about 2 feet from the surface, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to come to the surface. So I do. I just went ahead and went to the surface. And once I get to the surface, I start waving to the boat. And I'm saying, hey guys, come pick me up. We had just started the dive. This is only 6.5 minutes in. And at this point, I'm just like, I missed my safety stop. I need to get out of the water. I'm coughing. And here I am waving to my boat. You can see me waving around my GoPro and yelling at the boat, trying to get their attention. They saw me pretty quickly and came right over. So I just decided to relax here. And I'm just coughing on the surface, trying to clear my lungs. So, all kinds of things going wrong there. First of all, the panic. But looking back, I think I could have coughed through that into my octo and made a safe ascent. As I was ascending, I absolutely should have controlled my ascent, dumping air on the way up. I should have made my safety stop at about 20 feet and popped my SMB if I was committed to coming to the surface. It was really hard to breathe on both these regulators. They're not my regulators. They're much smaller. It was hard sucking air in, but I was getting air on the octo for sure. The primary, I don't know what caused the air to suck in. I don't know if there was again, a slit in the mouthpiece or something that I just over breathed it, or maybe the diaphragm, something wrong with the diaphragm. But I ended up with water in my aspirated water, so I was coughing that, and I panicked and I just came to the surface. So all kinds of things I could have done better for sure. My training did kick in at certain parts. I was trying to burp on the way up, but I was already kicking and moving too fast. The air was expanding too fast, and I was scrambling a bit to grab my dump valve. I didn't get it on my first grab. It took me about 2 grabs to reach over. And this is all happening so quickly. I'm just reaching on my right shoulder to grab my dump valve. I finally find it, yank it. And by the time I slow down, I'm just about 2 feet from the surface. And I'm just thinking, I can drop back down, do my safety stop, or I can just continue to the surface, drop the regulator out of my mouth, cough up my lungs, get the boat over here and get out of the water, which, by the way, is what I did. I really should have done my safety stop, but I did. I hopped out of the water, and I got out of the water pretty quickly. The boat was right there because we'd only been in for about 6.5 minutes, and so it came and picked me up. I got out. I'm coughing up my lungs on the deck. My dive buddy who was right behind me, I really should have communicated to her before I made that decision. I just was in panic mode at the time, but she saw me kind of book it, or at least what was left of the silt as I was kicking up towards the sky. And she followed me to the surface. She did a safety stop. She popped her SMB. I'm on the boat, stripped everything off. She finally pops up to the surface and asks me, is everything okay? Do you want me to come up there with you? And I said, nope, go ahead and finish the dive. Thank you. So she drops back down. We were in a 3-person buddy group. And so she drops back down with the other buddy and continues the dive and finishes it. A lot of that to let the dive master know what was happening, because I'm sure he was panicking with us all disappearing on him when we weren't coming through the second arch. And so I sat on the boat. I replaced my battery, tested everything out. With the replaced battery, everything was great. I had replaced the battery before the trip, but I had replaced it with a battery that I had bought when I first started diving, so like 7 months ago. And I'm just guessing the battery died for whatever reason. It was not fully charged, but I had another set of batteries I just bought before the trip that I should have just replaced it. So that was one lesson that I'm taking, is I just absolutely replace the battery before every trip. There's no point in trying to make batteries last through multiple trips, especially when, safety's on the line. So once I replaced the battery, everything worked great. I tested it on the tank on my cylinder for the next 25 minutes. It maintained pressure and was reporting to my dive computer, and then everybody else got on the boat. By that time, my lungs had kind of calmed down. And so once everybody got back on the boat, we went back to shore. I drank a bunch of water, got some electrolytes, took some ibuprofen, actually took like an hour nap. And then I got up and I was like, you know what, I'm feeling pretty good. And they announced that there was going to be a wreck dive that evening. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'll go do the wreck dive. So that's what I did, is I went ahead and I thought, you know what, I'm feeling good. My regulators are working, my transmitter's working. So I went ahead and jumped in onto the wreck dive, right? And I'm thinking, I can't let that incident stop me. It was rapid ascent, rapid uncontrolled descent, lots of coughing, or more than anything, a regulator mismatch between my body size and my breathing patterns, all things that I can work on as a diver. But I had that whole situation where, I shot to the surface. But on this dive, I was like, you know what? I need to prove to myself that was just like a one-off incident, and I can do a successful dive. And I didn't want to let that define my diving experience for the week, or be the end of my diving experience for the week. So I decided to go ahead and do this swim through, which, by the way, was a beautiful swim through. We get down there. I drop down. I've got a great buddy, by the way. Just an incredible diver was my buddy on this. Lots of experience, lots and lots of training. Pretty much every certification you get, he's got. We do this great dive, this great swim through of this wreck. Lots of openings to escape if anything goes wrong. I remember when we first went into the first engine room area, I was a little bit panicked, but I was like, okay, I'm just going to trust my equipment. I'm going to follow my buddy. There's plenty of places to bail if I need to, but I'm just going to go ahead and do this dive. So I'm kind of speeding through most of this here. But, we're swimming around the outside. We see some cool creatures. And then we kind of post up on the side of the boat. after everybody else exits from inside. And we're with the dolphin dive group from Sacramento. The whole staff is here at this point. And we're like, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take some pictures. But it's funny here, Melissa here, who's on the right with the white fins, she's hearing a sound nobody else is hearing. You can hear it on the GoPro. You hear that kind of whining in the background? Nobody can hear this except Melissa. She's looking around. Nobody else seems to notice. She makes a sign with her hand like, I hear something. So it's funny. That's like 2 minutes before the thing that's making the sound appears, and she's noticing it. It's incredible hearing underwater. So they all line up, and they're all like, okay, we're going to take some pictures. The whole dolphin dive staff is there taking pictures. And in the background comes this submarine. And I just start to see it in the background. I'm like, oh my goodness, is that what I think it is? So we're all underwater on this wreck dive, and here comes a submarine just puttering next to us. And that's the sound that she was hearing 2 minutes earlier before any of us heard it. But the GoPro definitely heard it. So, yeah. And you can see the little windows there on the side, the little circular windows on the side. That's people in there looking out at us, and we're looking in at them. It was crazy. So, again, amazing experience. We're seeing giant lobsters, giant crabs, interesting little creatures. We've got this submarine that goes by us, that drives by us. And, this is just an excellent experience. I'm not having any issues after the first dive incident. And so I'm just continuing on, right? And so we swim around the boat. We actually go through a port again and go through the rest of the boat. Now we're on the stern. We swim back around to the bow. And it's about, as we get around to the bow, here we go. So we're here drifting from the stern to the bow. So when we dropped in, there really wasn't any drift, and now there's like a really strong current pushing us towards the bow. And I'm trying to get our dive master's attention right here to let him know that I've got 700 PSI. So we've done this amazing dive, and I'm sitting trying to get his attention. He's not really looking at me, so I turn to my dive buddy, and I let him know I'm at 700. So he swims up to the dive master and gets his attention, says, hey, we've got 700. So he says, okay, you guys go ahead, buddy up. You guys go over to the buoy line, which is, by the way, on the stern side against the current, and go ahead and go up. And so my buddy and I now start to book it down that direction. So remember that, earlier on, I had the water aspiration incident. So my lungs are a little sensitive. So we start to book it towards the stern to get to that line. And it's about this point that I start to cough. We're still a little ways from the line. And in my head, I'm thinking, I'm not going to make it to the line. I'm already starting to cough. So this panic is starting to well up in me. I'm getting flashbacks of the previous dive. I'm starting to breathe a little bit faster because I'm trying to breathe shallow so as not to trigger a cough. But I'm sitting here coughing and diving and really exerting myself to get to this line. And you can hear my breathing is starting to really pick up here, right? Shallow, quick breaths I'm taking here because I'm just trying not to trigger more coughing. But I end up coughing anyway. You can hear I've got really dry breathing. This is awesome. These regulators are amazing. You can hear me cough there every once in a while. And that's my watch telling me that I'm at 500 PSI, right? So I'm getting to the line. I'm not quite there, but in my head, I'm thinking, I'm not going to make this. Like, I'm starting to panic. I can see the surface right there. I'm kind of thinking, I'm just going to skip my safety dive, safety stop. But we've been under here for probably about 40 minutes, 45 minutes at anywhere between 65 to 75 feet. I really do need to take a safety stop on this. Like, there's no question in my brain I need to take a safety stop. But I'm a little bit panicked. But I went ahead and grabbed the line, and I think to myself, okay, I can do this. I have to do this. I have to prove to myself I can do this. So I'm taking these quick breaths, trying not to cough. just trying to control myself here for a few seconds. And I even end up looking at my dive computer here in just a sec. Again, I'm just trying to control my breathing at this point. I'm distracting myself a little bit, looking at all these amazing fish, looking at the bubbles, looking around at the scenery, just trying not to focus on the fact that I'm in the middle of a coughing fit and just trying to avoid coughing while in my regulator. But I will tell you, with these next regulators, coughing was so much easier. I was able to cough into them and get enough air to continue breathing and coughing into them. So I was really happy about that. I think at some point here, I'm not sure when, but I look at my watch here, my dive computer in just a second to check how much time I have left, because I'm just kind of like, come on. I'm going to try to stay calm. I'm going to try to control my breath, but I really want to get out of the water at this point. I even close my eyes right here. I just need a couple seconds to get my breath. You can see that I've got 57 seconds left, and I'm just trying to stay focused, right? We can do this. By the way, these regulators are amazing. The 2.5 balanced adjustable next dive regulator. Beautiful regulator. But, and you heard me cough there just for a second, but I'm just thinking, okay, I'm just going to enjoy this. I know I'm coughing. I can cough up on the surface, or I can cough here in my regulator and have an amazing time and a good safety stop. And so that's what I do. I end up just staying for my safety stop. You can hear my breath is just finally starting to slow. And at this point, I think we hit the end of our safety stop. I think I give like the thumbs up or the the okay sign and then the thumbs up here in just a second. There it is. Yep, that's my dive computer going, and we're all done. So I just come up just a little bit, and I let my dive buddy know that my safety stop is done. His is done in like 5 seconds, but I'm going to go ahead and start ascending. First thing I do is I grab my deflator, and I start deflating on the way up, just to make sure we've got a nice controlled descent. I'm coughing on the way, but at the time I'm just thinking, like, I could be coughing in the air, or I could be coughing in the regulator. Either way, I've got air. I just need to be safe about this ascent. So that's what happens on the ascent. And I'm really glad I did the second dive. And I'm going to go ahead and go back to earlier in this particular dive and kind of let it play while I give a summary of how everything else played out, because a few more things happened later in the day. So I'm just going to let this play. I just went ahead and rewound it back to another spot in the dive when we repenetrate the wreck. But I'm really glad I did this dive. This is still the same dive, just earlier in it. But I'm really glad I did this because it restored my confidence in my training and in my equipment. Shout out to Next Dive, just incredible regulators. I'm glad that I was able to get the battery replaced so I could actually use it on this next dive, because I learned that I'm never going to use anybody else's regulators. I'm going to use my own regulators. I know how they're maintained. I know how they operate. I know how they feel. I know how to adjust them. I'm just sticking with my own regulators from now on. Again, we had a great experience on this dive right here. Now, to kind of follow up what happens when I surface, right? So we get to the surface. We don't really need an SMB on this particular dive because the boat's sitting there right next to the buoy. We come to the surface. We get to the boat. And it's actually kind of funny. I'm at this point coughing quite a bit, right? So we exerted quite a bit of effort to get to the line. I had time to relax, but now that we're at the surface, we're getting to the boat, we're exerting a little bit more energy getting back onto the boat. I'm starting to cough again, and I'm pretty worn down at this point. And maybe I'm not really getting as much oxygen as I should. My SpO2 levels are pretty low at this point. But we get to the boat, and I asked my dive buddy to help me take my fins off before I get up into the boat. And we ended up dropping one of the fins. So one of my fins is sitting on this wreck, or somewhere around the wreck. They were negative buoyancy fins. That was really smart of me, I know. but they ended up falling back onto the wreck. So maybe I'll get a call from the dive shop there someday saying, "Hey, we found your fin." One of the other uh, dive groups found it, or maybe not. I just need to go get some new fins now. But after this incident, I end up getting on the boat. I get my gear off, and I am just coughing up a storm. Right, I am leaning on the side. I'm almost throwing up at certain points, and I'm coughing up kind of an orangish phlegm and spitting it out into the water and feeding the fish. But that's not really a great sign. And at some point, the rest of the group surfaces and jumps back on the boat. Uh, one of the master divers from the dolphin group sees me coughing like this and says, "Is everything okay?" And I was like, "Well, this is just kind of a remnant from earlier, the previous dive." And I explained to him what happened on that dive, all of the details of it. And he said, there might be some expansion damage with how I ascended. And I was like, "Well, I was breathing and coughing the whole way up, so I don't know that there is expansion damage." But he said, "It's better to be safe than sorry." So I said, "Okay." So after that dive, I go back to the room, and I go see the paramedic. The paramedic at the resort checks my SpO2 level, sees that I'm at 88%, puts me on oxygen, checks my blood sugar, checks a whole bunch of things. We get my SpO2 back up to 94%, which is better, but it's still not perfect. Blood sugar is great. Everything, all the other signs are okay. But his recommendation, because my oxygen levels are so low and because of the incident, is to go to the hospital. So I end up going to the hospital, to the emergency room, and I'm seen by a doctor. They rule out any type of any DCS, any decompression sickness, or any expansion damage. And they just say basically the aspiration event really aggravated my throat, and being saltwater didn't help and really tore it up. Plus all the coughing between the two dives in dry air with all the exertion just really didn't help. And so his recommendation was like, just let it rest, just like you would a cough, right? You're not going to, like you would a cough from a cold. You really shouldn't be diving with that. So he prescribed me some medication, told me to take at least a few days to let it recover, and not to do any diving until the inflammation and pain in my throat was gone. I still have a little bit of coughing, but the pain isn't there anymore. But I'm still going to give it a couple more days. It's been about 4 days since the dive. I'm still going to give it at least a couple more days to hopefully clear up the coughing a little bit more. But I'm about ready to go jump back in the water. But that was pretty much all it was, is he gave me some medication, told me to rest. So the last 2 days of my trip, I didn't do any more diving. So I got 7 dives in on this trip. It was awesome. Okay, so here are the things that I've learned. And I know that there are definitely things that I need to do better. And I expect that there will be plenty of people in the comments who will be able to share with me their wisdom about things to do in the future. First and foremost, I need to get, I actually did just get an analog SPG for my core dive kit. So in my regulator set, I now have an analog SPG that is my backup pressure in case something does happen to my transmitter while I'm underwater. Secondly, I'm always going to have a new battery on every trip I take. I'm going to put a new battery into my transmitter and ensure that thing is reading the cylinder pressure before I jump in the water, or I'm not jumping in the water. Third, I'm not going to use anybody else's regs. I will use my regs because I know them, I trust them, and they breathe great for me. And so I just need to make sure I have all of the redundancy in the pressure in the dive computer. So I'm even looking at getting a backup dive computer, maybe an X30, a Garmin X30, and put that on the opposite wrist. So those are the things just from a preparatory perspective. Additionally, I need to work on my breathing. Like, I was breathing way harder than I should have been. And there's a few factors that lead into that. But I need to work on my breathing. There are different patterns of breathing that are better for divers that I just haven't learned or mastered yet that I need to work on. I need to work on my trim to make sure that I'm not a big sail, a big parachute in the wind, that I'm more streamlined into the drift when there's a current, so that I don't have to use as much energy. I need to work on my frog kicks so that I'm not flutter kicking everywhere and using bigger muscles to propel me, but that I'm using frog kicks to move me forward significantly more efficiently. So those are just a few of the things I'm thinking of that I need to do so that I don't have a situation like this again. Again, this was an incredible trip. The entire dolphin dive group was amazing. The staff was amazing. The resort was amazing. These dives were amazing. I know that that dive of the incident, the aspiration incident, my sixth dive, could have been prevented, but it happened, and I could have responded better. But again, that's why I'm glad I did the seventh rec dive, or the seventh dive, which was the rec dive, is that I really got to test my training and my equipment that is my equipment, and build that confidence in the gear. So it was actually a really wonderful experience. It could have gone a lot worse. I understand that. And I'm grateful that it didn't. And I'm grateful that I came out okay. I'm still new to this. And I'm planning to do a whole lot more diving and working on a lot of skills and get a lot more training and build more redundancy in my equipment so that I don't have to have stressful situations like that again. But again, in the training, I need to, even if they're mock scenarios, I need to work on a lot of these emergency situations so that I do know how to respond appropriately in these emergency situations. So anyway, it was a great trip. I'm really grateful I did it. I just wanted to share with everybody what transpired and maybe get the collective wisdom of everybody who sees this and can comment on it and point me in the right direction. I'm keen to learn and get better at this, and I know that there's so much to learn in this. I'm barely scratching the surface in my early days of diving. So, looking forward to it.